The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks before Christmas. I was standing in my kitchen, flour dusting my hands from the sugar cookies I'd been rolling out, when my son Brad's voice cut through the line like ice. "Mom, Amanda and I have been talking. We've decided we need some space this Christmas. We're not going to be able to have you and Dad over this year." His words were rehearsed, distant, like he was reading from a script someone else had written. My hand trembled against the receiver as I stared at the ceramic snowman I'd placed on the windowsill that morning, the Christmas decorations I'd hung with such anticipation suddenly mocking me. This was my son. The boy I'd rocked through countless sleepless nights, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose dreams I'd nurtured, and he was uninviting me from Christmas. I set the phone down carefully, as if moving too quickly might shatter what remained of my composure. The silence in the kitchen felt heavy, pressing down on my chest until I couldn't breathe properly. Walter found me there 20 minutes later, still standing in the same spot, flour now smeared across my cheek from where I'd touched my face without thinking. "Dusty?" His voice was gentle, concerned. "What happened?" I told him. Watched as his weathered face, marked by 65 years of living and 38 years of loving me, crumpled just slightly before he caught himself. Walter had always been the steady one, the man who'd worked as an electrician for 42 years, providing for our family without complaint. He didn't show emotion easily, but I saw the hurt flash across his eyes before he buried it. "Did he say why?" Walter asked, his voice carefully neutral. I shook my head. "Just that Amanda feels uncomfortable, that they need space. We'd raised 3 children in this house. Brad was our oldest at 35, followed by Caroline at 32, and Tyler at 28. I'd been an elementary school teacher for 30 years before retiring, and every penny we'd saved had gone into giving our kids opportunities, experiences, love. We weren't wealthy. Our home in suburban Ohio was modest, a 3-bedroom ranch with a yard Walter meticulously maintained and a kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals. But it had been filled with laughter, with birthday parties and homework sessions and family dinners where everyone actually talked to each other. Brad had married Amanda 4 years ago. She came from money, from one of those Connecticut families where appearances mattered more than authenticity. She worked in marketing for a pharmaceutical company, made 3 times what Brad earned as a high school history teacher, and never let anyone forget it. At their wedding, her parents had looked at our side of the church with barely concealed disdain, as if our middle-class relatives might somehow contaminate their designer clothes. I'd tried. God knows I'd tried with Amanda. I'd bitten my tongue when she'd corrected my grammar at Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago, pointing out that I'd used good when I should have said well. I'd smiled when she'd walked through our house and called it quaint, suggesting we might want to update our outdated furniture. I'd stayed quiet when she'd posted photos of their minimalist apartment online with captions about curating a sophisticated living space, the implication being that our home, filled with family photos and comfortable, worn furniture, was neither sophisticated nor curated. The erosion had been slow. Brad used to call every Sunday. Then it became every other Sunday. Then once a month. Visits became shorter, excuses more frequent. Last Christmas, they'd come for dinner, but Amanda had spent most of the time on her phone, photographing the food with a critical eye before posting about rustic holiday traditions. Brad had seemed tense, jumping whenever Amanda sighed or made one of her pointed comments. But this outright rejection felt like a knife between my ribs. I called Caroline that evening. My daughter had always been direct, honest in a way that sometimes hurt but was always rooted in love. She answered on the second ring. "Mom, I was going to call you," she said, and something in her tone made my stomach drop. "You know," I said, "it wasn't a question. Brad told Tyler and me last week. He said you and Dad weren't invited this year, that it would just be him, Amanda, and Amanda's parents." Caroline's voice was tight with anger. I told him he was making a mistake, but he wouldn't listen. He kept saying Amanda needed boundaries, that you were too involved. Too involved. The accusation stung worse because it was so patently false. I'd been careful, so careful to give them space. I didn't drop by unannounced. I didn't call more than once a week. I'd learned to ask before offering advice, to wait for invitations rather than assuming I was welcome. "Caroline," I said slowly, "have I been overbearing?" "Mom, no." Her response was immediate and fierce. You've been the opposite. You've bent over backwards to make Amanda comfortable. But Caroline paused, and I heard her take a breath. Mom, Amanda's been posting things online about you and Dad. My hand tightened on the phone. What kind of things? Just complaints. About how exhausting it is to deal with difficult in-laws. She makes up these stories, exaggerates things that never happened. She told her followers that you showed up at their apartment unannounced and rearranged their furniture. You've never even been to their apartment. The room tilted slightly. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten thousands of family meals, where I'd helped Brad with his algebra homework, where Walter and I had shared morning coffee for decades. Why would she do that? I whispered. Because she's insecure, Caroline said bluntly. Because you and Dad have something real, and it threatens whatever fake perfect life she's trying to build. After I hung up, I did something I'd never done before. I looked up Amanda's social media accounts. She had Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all public, all meticulously curated. It didn't take long to find the posts Caroline mentioned. There, between photos of Amanda's perfectly styled outfits and artfully arranged brunches, were complaints about her in-laws. Trying to establish boundaries with family who don't understand personal space. One read, accompanied by an eye-roll emoji. When your MIL thinks she knows better than you about everything? Another said. Planning a drama-free holiday this year. Sometimes you have to protect your peace, even if it means disappointing people who are used to getting their way. That last one had been posted yesterday. 63 people had liked it. 42 had commented, most agreeing, sharing their own stories of difficult relatives. I sat in the glow of my laptop screen, reading lies about myself, and felt something crack open inside me. Not just hurt anymore. Anger. Real, righteous anger. Walter found me there an hour later, tears streaming down my face. She's been telling people I'm intrusive, I said, my voice breaking. That I don't respect boundaries. Walter, I've done everything she asked. I stayed away when she wanted space. I didn't comment on their life choices. I swallowed every criticism. And still, she's painted me as the villain. Walter pulled up a chair beside me, read the posts over my shoulder. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. Brad knows about this? He asked. I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe he's so desperate to please her that he doesn't question it. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, snow had started to fall, dusting our quiet street with white. Christmas lights glowed in neighbors' windows. Somewhere down the block, children were laughing. What do we do? I finally asked. Walter took my hand, his palm rough with calluses from a lifetime of honest work. I don't know, Dusty, but we're not going to beg. We're not going to grovel. We raised that boy better than this, and if he's forgotten, that's on him, not us. I spent the next 3 days in a fog of grief. I'd wake up at 3 a.m, replaying every interaction with Brad and Amanda, searching for the moment I'd crossed some invisible line. Had I hugged Brad too long at their last visit? Had I asked too many questions? Had I committed some unforgivable sin that warranted this exile? On Friday morning, I stood in front of the mirror, really looking at myself for the first time in weeks. I was 62 years old. My hair had gone silver years ago, and I'd stopped dyeing it, letting it fall in natural waves to my shoulders. Wrinkles creased the corners of my eyes, each one a map of smiles and laughter. I wasn't trying to be something I wasn't. I'd lived an honest life, loved honestly, given honestly, and I was done apologizing for it. The realization came quietly, not as a bolt of lightning, but as a gentle settling, like snow finding the ground. I walked into the living room where Walter sat reading the newspaper, his reading glasses perched on his nose. I want to throw a party, I said. He looked up, surprised. What? Christmas. I want to throw the biggest, most beautiful Christmas party we've ever had. I want to invite everyone who actually wants to be here. I want to fill this house with love and laughter and show our son exactly what he's choosing to miss. A slow smile spread across Walter's face. You want to fight back. I want to take back our joy, I corrected. I'm done shrinking myself to make other people comfortable. If Brad and Amanda don't want us at their Christmas, fine. We'll have our own, and it'll be better than anything they could have given us. Walter stood, crossed to me, and pulled me into his arms. That's my girl, he murmured against my hair. "The woman I married wouldn't let anyone dim her light." We made lists. Caroline and Tyler were our first calls, and both were immediately enthusiastic. Caroline offered to bring her famous apple pie and her husband Jason's homemade eggnog. Tyler promised to handle music and bring his girlfriend Sarah, who apparently made incredible roasted vegetables. But we didn't stop there. I called Walter's brother Dennis and his wife Martha, who lived 2 hours away and always made us laugh. I called my teaching colleagues, women who'd been my friends for decades. I called the neighbors, the ones who'd watched our kids grow up and had become like family. I even called 3 of my former students who'd stayed in touch over the years, young adults now with families of their own who still sent me Christmas cards thanking me for believing in them. Every person I called said yes immediately. Many sounded honored to be included. "We're going to need more food," Walter said, tallying the RSVPs. "Then we'll make more food," I said, feeling more energized than I had in months. I planned the menu with military precision. Honey-glazed ham as the centerpiece, my recipe that I'd perfected over 30 years. Scalloped potatoes with 3 kinds of cheese. Green bean casserole made from scratch, not the canned version. Homemade dinner rolls that filled the house with the scent of yeast and butter. Cranberry sauce with orange zest and cinnamon. A massive garden salad with candied pecans. And desserts? Oh, the desserts. My famous pecan pie with bourbon. Sugar cookies shaped like snowflakes, decorated with royal icing. Chocolate peppermint bark. Gingerbread with homemade whipped cream. Walter and I decorated together, something we'd always done. We strung lights along the eaves, hung garlands on the staircase, placed luminarias along the walkway. Our Christmas tree stood 8 feet tall in the living room, covered with ornaments collected over 4 decades. Each one told a story. The handprint ornament Brad made in 1st grade, the delicate glass angel my mother had given us our first Christmas together, the silly felt reindeer Caroline had insisted on buying at a school craft fair. I bought a new dress for the party, something I almost never did. It was emerald green, fitted at the waist, falling just below my knees. When I tried it on, I felt beautiful. Not despite my age, but because of all the years I'd lived, all the joy and sorrow that had shaped me into who I was. The party was scheduled for December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. As the date approached, I felt something I hadn't expected, genuine excitement. This wasn't about revenge or proving a point anymore. This was about celebrating the life Walter and I had built, honoring the people who valued us. Then, on December 21st, my phone rang. Amanda's name lit up the screen. I considered not answering, but curiosity won. "Dusty." Amanda's voice was syrupy sweet, the tone you'd use with a child or someone you considered simple. "I'm so glad I caught you. Brad and I have been talking, and we've reconsidered our Christmas plans." I said nothing, waiting. "We'd love for you and Walter to join us for Christmas after all. We know how much it means to you." The condescension dripped from every word. I gripped the phone tighter. "That's very kind," I said carefully. "But what changed your mind?" "Oh, well, we just realized family is important. So here's what we're thinking. You can come over Christmas afternoon, maybe around 2. Stay for a couple hours. We're doing a minimalist celebration this year, very elegant, so please don't bring gifts for Brad. Amanda has worked very hard on a specific aesthetic, and we wouldn't want to clutter it. Oh, and dress nicely. We'll be taking photos for our Christmas card." Each condition felt like a small slap. Come for 2 hours. Don't bring gifts. Dress appropriately for their photos. Be grateful for whatever scraps they chose to throw us. Something hot and fierce rose in my chest. "Thank you for the invitation, Amanda," I said, my voice steady and clear. "But I'm afraid Walter and I have other plans. We'll be hosting our own Christmas celebration this year." Silence on the other end. Then, "Excuse me?" "We've already made commitments to other people, family and friends who want to spend time with us. So we won't be available Christmas Day. But thank you for thinking of us." "But," Amanda sputtered, clearly not having expected resistance. "But you can't just say no. Brad really wants you there." Then Brad should have invited us himself, genuinely, without conditions or time limits. "I've spent the last 2 years trying to fit into whatever box you've decided I belong in, Amanda. I'm done with that. I hope you and Brad have a lovely Christmas." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from power, from the sheer relief of finally standing up for myself. Walter emerged from his workshop, sawdust in his hair. Who was that? Amanda, inviting us to Christmas. 2 hours, no gifts, dress appropriately for photos. His eyebrows rose. And you said? I said no. Walter's grin was fierce and proud. Good. They don't deserve you. December 23rd dawned cold and clear, the kind of winter day where sunlight makes snow sparkle like diamonds. I'd been up since 5. My teacher's habits never fully retired, preparing food and making sure every detail was perfect. By noon, the house smelled like heaven. Ham glazing in the oven, bread rising on the counter, cookies cooling on racks. Walter had shoveled the walkway and scattered rock salt, making sure no one would slip. He'd also set up a coat rack by the door and arranged extra chairs in the living room. Caroline arrived first, at 1 o'clock, with Jason and their daughter Emma, who was 7 and vibrating with excitement about the party. Grandma, your house looks like a fairy tale, Emma breathed, staring at the twinkling lights. That's exactly what I was going for, I said, hugging her tight. Tyler came next with Sarah, bearing trays of roasted Brussels sprouts and butternut squash. Then the flood started. Dennis and Martha, my friend Gloria from teaching, neighbors Frank and Susan, former students Jennifer and Marcus with their toddlers. By 3 o'clock, 32 people filled our house, far more than I'd anticipated. Some had brought friends, some had brought family members, and I'd said yes to everyone. The noise was glorious, chaotic, and warm. Jason had brought a professional camera and was documenting everything, snapping photos of the food, the decorations, the people laughing and talking. Tyler set up a playlist of Christmas classics, and soon Bing Crosby was crooning about White Christmas while people sang along. The meal was served buffet style, everyone loading plates and finding seats wherever they could. Some sat at the dining table, others on the couch, a few on the floor. Emma sat between Walter and me, chattering about school and her new puppy. As the evening wore on, something magical happened. People started sharing stories. Gloria talked about the time I'd convinced the principal to let her try an experimental teaching method that had revolutionized her classroom. Jennifer, one of my former students, shared how I'd tutored her for free when her family couldn't afford extra help, how I'd written her college recommendation letters, how I'd believed in her when she hadn't believed in herself. Mrs. Dusty, she said, her eyes bright. You changed my life. I'm a teacher now because of you. Tyler stood, raising his glass of eggnog. I want to make a toast. To my parents who've spent their lives showing everyone around them what real love looks like. Not perfect love, but honest love. The kind that shows up, that forgives, that creates home wherever they are. Mom, Dad, thank you for teaching us that family isn't about obligation. It's about choice. And everyone in this room chose to be here tonight because you make people feel valued. The room erupted in agreement, glasses clinking. I felt tears on my cheeks and didn't bother wiping them away. Later, Walter pulled me into the living room, where the lights from the tree cast everything in a warm glow. He wrapped his arms around me, and we swayed to Nat King Cole singing about chestnuts roasting. Then we'll make more food, I said, feeling more energized than I had in months. It's what love should feel like, I replied, not performative or conditional, just real. Jason had brought a professional camera and was documenting everything, snapping photos of the food, the decorations, the people laughing and talking. Tyler set up a playlist of Christmas classics, and soon Bing Crosby was crooning about White Christmas while people sang along. The photos told a story, not of a perfect, curated celebration, but of something better, authentic connection. Around 9 o'clock, my phone started buzzing. I ignored it at first, too absorbed in conversation with Martha about her recent trip to visit their daughter in Colorado. But it kept buzzing, vibrating against the table where I'd left it. I glanced at the screen. Brad. Calling. I sent it to voicemail. Moments later, he called again. And again. Mom, Caroline said quietly, noticing. Brad's called me 4 times in the last hour. Me too, Tyler added. He sounds kind of frantic. I checked my phone. 7 missed calls from Brad. 3 voicemails. A text that simply read, Mom, please pick up. What do you think happened? Walter asked. Caroline pulled out her phone, scrolled through her social media. Her eyes widened. Oh, wow. What? She turned the screen toward me. My posts had gotten traction, shared and liked by dozens of people. But more importantly, someone had commented, "What a beautiful family celebration. So warm and genuine." That someone was Patricia Monroe, Amanda's mother. Amanda's mom saw the photos, Caroline said. She commented on 3 of them, asked why they weren't at such a lovely gathering, asked if there was a family issue she should know about. Tyler started laughing, a slightly shocked sound. Amanda must be losing her mind. My phone buzzed again. Brad, call number 11. I looked around the room at the people who'd chosen to celebrate with us, at the love that filled every corner of this modest house that Amanda had called quaint and outdated. I thought about all the times I'd bent myself into uncomfortable shapes, trying to earn her approval, trying to be less than I was so she could feel bigger. I sent Brad's call to voicemail. "Tonight's not about him," I said quietly. "It's about all of you." By the time the party wound down around midnight, Brad had called 37 times. 37 times. I didn't answer once. Christmas Eve morning arrived with heavy clouds and the promise of more snow. I was in the kitchen, packing up leftovers for Caroline and Tyler to take home, when the doorbell rang. It was 8:30. We weren't expecting anyone. Walter answered the door. I heard his voice, carefully neutral. "Brad." "Amanda, this is a surprise." My stomach dropped. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the foyer. There stood my son, looking rumpled and exhausted in a way I hadn't seen since his college finals. Amanda stood beside him, perfectly put together as always in a cream-colored cashmere coat, but her expression was tight, her eyes hard. "We were in the neighborhood," Brad said, the lie obvious. "We lived 23 miles from their apartment. Thought we'd stop by." "On Christmas Eve morning," Walter said, his tone making it clear he wasn't buying it. "Can we come in?" Amanda asked, her voice carrying an edge of irritation. Walter stepped aside. They entered, and I led them to the living room, where evidence of last night's party still lingered. The guest book on the coffee table, filled with handwritten messages of love and gratitude, cookie crumbs on a plate, the scent of pine and cinnamon still hanging in the air. Brad's eyes swept the room, taking it all in. He looked at the decorations, at the beautiful tree, at the garland wrapped around the staircase. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe. Or regret. "Coffee?" I offered, falling back on the habits of hospitality even as my heart pounded. "Sure," Brad said quietly. Amanda remained silent, her gaze cataloging everything with barely concealed judgment. I made coffee, my hands steady despite the trembling in my chest. Walter joined Brad and Amanda in the living room. When I returned with mugs, the silence was thick enough to cut. "So," Amanda began, her tone artificially bright, "looks like you had quite the party." "We did," I said simply, sitting beside Walter on the love seat. "It was wonderful." "Must have taken a lot of effort," Amanda continued, and there it was, the passive-aggressive jab. All that cooking, all those people, so much work. "It didn't feel like work," I replied, keeping my voice level. "It felt like joy." Brad shifted uncomfortably. "Why didn't you tell us you were having a party?" The question hung in the air. I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he become so small? When had he started choosing comfort over courage? "Brad," I said gently, "you uninvited us from your Christmas. You made it very clear we weren't part of your plans. So Walter and I made our own plans with people who wanted to spend time with us. It's that simple." "It's not that simple," Brad protested. "We were trying to establish boundaries, healthy boundaries. Amanda was just trying to protect our space." "By excluding your parents from Christmas?" Walter's voice was quiet but firm. "By allowing your wife to post lies about your mother online? By letting us be painted as intrusive and overbearing when we've done nothing but respect your space?" Brad's face paled. "What are you talking about?" "Your wife has been posting about us on social media for months," I said, complaining about difficult in-laws, making up stories that never happened. "Telling the world we don't respect boundaries when we've bent over backwards to give you space." Amanda's cheeks flushed. "Those posts were private thoughts. You weren't supposed to see them. They were public posts on public accounts," Walter said. and they were cruel. I was trying to establish boundaries, Amanda repeated, her voice rising defensively. Your generation doesn't understand that. You think family means unlimited access, no privacy, constant involvement. Our generation, I said slowly, understands that family means showing up. It means honoring the people who raised you. It means not throwing away unconditional love because your spouse is uncomfortable with genuine affection. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Amanda said, standing abruptly. You're being manipulative. You're trying to make Brad feel guilty for choosing his wife over you. I'm not asking him to choose, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I never have. I've only asked to be treated with basic respect and kindness, something you've been unwilling to give. Brad looked between us, his expression anguished. Amanda, did you really post about Mom and Dad online? I needed to vent, Amanda said. It's what people do. It's normal. Making up lies is normal? Walter asked. They weren't lies. They were my perception. Your perception that Dusty showed up unannounced and rearranged your furniture? I asked quietly. Brad, I've never even been to your apartment. You've never invited us. Brad's face went white. Amanda, is that true? Did you post that? Amanda's composure was cracking, her perfectly made-up face showing strain. It was hyperbole. It was a joke. About my mother, Brad said, his voice hollow. The front door opened. Caroline and Tyler walked in, unexpected but not unwelcome. They'd planned to stop by to drop off gifts, but stopped short seeing Brad and Amanda. Oh, Caroline said. We didn't know you'd be here. We weren't planning on it, Amanda said tightly. Tyler looked at me, at Walter, at his older brother. What's going on? We're having a conversation about boundaries, Amanda said, her voice dripping with sarcasm, about how your parents can't seem to accept that Brad and I need space. That's interesting, Tyler said slowly, considering you asked me 6 months ago to help you manage Mom and Dad, to keep them at a distance because they were, and I quote, too much. The room went silent. Brad turned to Tyler. What? Tyler looked uncomfortable but resolute. Last summer, Amanda called me, asked me to help create distance between you and Mom and Dad. Said they were suffocating your marriage, that we needed to work together to limit their involvement in your life. I told her no. I told her Mom and Dad had done nothing wrong, and that if she had a problem, she needed to address it directly, instead of manipulating everyone behind the scenes. Brad was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Amanda? I was trying to protect us, Amanda insisted, but her voice wavered. From what? Brad asked. From people who love me? From parents who've never done anything but support me? Caroline spoke up then, her voice hard. She also tried to exclude Mom and Dad from your birthday last April. Called me, suggested we do a small dinner with just you, her, and her parents. Said it would be more sophisticated without the whole family there. I told her she was out of line. This is ganging up, Amanda said, her voice shrill. You're all ganging up on me. We're telling the truth, Caroline said. Something you've apparently struggled with. Brad sank into a chair, his head in his hands. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have believed us? Tyler asked gently. You've been so wrapped up in making Amanda happy, in being the person she wants you to be. Would you have heard us if we'd tried to tell you your wife was systematically cutting your family out of your life? The silence that followed Tyler's question was suffocating. Brad sat with his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking slightly. Amanda stood frozen, her perfect composure crumbling around her like a facade finally giving way. Brad, Amanda said, her voice taking on a pleading quality. You have to understand. I was protecting us. Your family is so intense, so involved. I grew up in a house where everyone had their own space, their own lives. Your family is all up in each other's business constantly. It's overwhelming. Overwhelming, I repeated softly. Is that what you call love? Amanda turned to me, and for the first time I saw something raw in her expression. Not the polished perfection she usually wore, but something desperate and afraid. Yes, she said. Yes, it is overwhelming. Do you know what it's like to watch you and Walter together? To see how you look at each other after almost 40 years? To watch Brad's face light up when he talks about growing up in this house? It's like this constant reminder of everything my family isn't. The confession seemed to surprise even her. She pressed her hand to her mouth, but the words kept coming. My parents have been married for 42 years, and I've never once seen them dance in the kitchen. I've never heard them laugh together like you and Walter do. My mother plans their social calendar like military campaigns. My father works 80-hour weeks and communicates through his assistant. When I was growing up, dinner was silent. Formal affairs where we discussed academic achievements and networking opportunities. Her voice cracked. And then I met Brad's family, and you were all so warm. So easy with each other. And I hated it. I hated how much it showed me what I didn't have. What I never had. I felt Walter's hand find mine, squeezing gently. Despite everything, despite the hurt Amanda had caused, I felt a flicker of compassion for this broken young woman standing in my living room. "So you tried to pull Brad away," I said quietly, "to create a different kind of family." "I tried to create what I knew," Amanda said. "Structure, distance, sophistication. I thought if I could make our life look perfect on the outside, it would feel perfect on the inside." "But it doesn't work that way," Brad said, his voice rough. He looked up at Amanda, his eyes red-rimmed. "Does it? We've been married 4 years, and I don't think I've ever felt further from you." Amanda flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" Brad stood, and there was something different in his posture. Straighter. Stronger. "You've spent our entire marriage trying to remake me. To distance me from the people who actually know me, who love me for who I am, not who you want me to be. You criticized my clothes until I dressed like your colleagues. You mocked my hobbies until I gave them up. You even got me to stop teaching the poetry unit I loved, because you said it made me seem less professional." "I was trying to help you succeed," Amanda protested. "You were trying to erase me," Brad said. "And I let you. God help me, I let you because I was so desperate to be the husband you wanted that I forgot to be myself." Caroline stepped forward. "Brad, you need to know something else. At Mom's party last night, there were 3 of your former students. They drove from 2 hours away to be here. They told stories about how Mom and Dad influenced their lives, about the love and stability this house represented." She pulled out her phone, showed Brad a photo. "Look at this. Really look at it. Mom and Dad dancing in their living room. Emma sitting on Grandpa's lap listening to a story. Tyler and Sarah laughing with the neighbors. Real joy, real connection. When's the last time you had that? When's the last time you felt that free?" Brad looked at the photo for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "I can't remember." Amanda's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went even paler. "It's my mother." "Let me guess," Caroline said. "She wants to know why she's seeing photos of a beautiful family Christmas celebration that her daughter and son-in-law mysteriously weren't part of." Amanda nodded mutely. "What did you tell her?" Brad asked. "What excuse did you give for excluding my parents from our Christmas?" "I told her you wanted a quiet, intimate celebration," Amanda said. "Just us and my parents. And now she's seen evidence that my family had a party with 32 people, and we weren't there." Brad's laugh was bitter. "How does that look, Amanda? For someone so concerned with appearances, how does it look that we excluded my parents and then they threw a celebration that looks like something out of a Hallmark movie?" Amanda's phone buzzed again. Then again. She was getting multiple calls, multiple messages. Her carefully constructed narrative was collapsing in real time. "I need to go," she said abruptly. "Running away?" Tyler asked. "That's your solution?" "I need to talk to my parents. I need to explain." "Explain what?" I asked, my voice gentle despite everything. "Explain that you've been so ashamed of your own emotional poverty that you tried to make my son equally poor? Explain that you saw love and warmth as weaknesses to be eliminated rather than strengths to be celebrated?" Amanda looked at me, and tears were streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. "You don't understand." "I think I do," I said. "Better than you realize. You're scared, Amanda. Scared that if Brad sees what real love looks like, he'll realize what your marriage is missing. And you're right to be scared because he is realizing it, right now, in this moment." Brad walked to Amanda, but there was distance in his approach, a carefulness that spoke volumes. "I think we need help. Professional help, marriage counseling, individual therapy, something. Because this," he gestured between them, "this isn't working, this isn't healthy." "You're choosing them over me," Amanda said. "I'm choosing honesty over pretense," Brad corrected. I'm choosing to acknowledge that we have problems instead of pretending everything is fine. And yes, I'm choosing to have a relationship with my parents, who've done nothing to deserve being cut out of my life. Amanda's phone rang again. This time she answered, "Hi, Daddy." We could hear the voice on the other end, stern and demanding. Amanda's face crumbled further. "No, Daddy, it's not. I can explain. Yes, I saw the photos. No, we weren't there because..." She looked at Brad, at me, at the evidence of everything she'd tried to destroy and failed, because I made a mistake. The admission seemed to cost her everything. She stumbled slightly, and Brad caught her elbow, steadying her despite everything. "I need to go," she said again, this time to all of us. "I need to. I can't be here right now." "Amanda," I said, stopping her at the door. "I'm not your enemy. I never was, and I hope someday you'll be able to see that." She looked at me, mascara streaked and trembling, and nodded once before fleeing to her car. Brad stood in the doorway, watching her go. "I'm sorry," he said without turning around. "I'm so sorry." Walter stood, walked to our son, and put a hand on his shoulder. "You're always welcome here, Brad. Always. But you need to figure out who you are and what you want, not what Amanda wants. Not what we want. What you want." Brad turned, and I saw the boy he'd been alongside the man he was becoming. "Can I stay here tonight? I need some space to think." "Your room is exactly as you left it," I said. "It's always been waiting for you to come home." Brad's old room still had his high school pennant on the wall, his bookshelf filled with fantasy novels and history textbooks, his twin bed with the blue plaid comforter. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, just looking. "I'd forgotten," he said softly. "Forgotten what?" I asked, standing behind him. "How it felt to have a space that was just mine. No judgment. No expectations about what it should look like or how I should use it." He set his overnight bag on the floor and sat on the bed, the springs creaking in a familiar way. I sat beside him, the way I had hundreds of times when he was younger, when he'd had a bad day at school or a fight with a friend. "I really messed up, didn't I?" he said. "You made choices that hurt people you love," I replied carefully. "But you're recognizing that now. That's what matters. I keep thinking about last night. About your party. I saw the photos, Mom. All those people, all that joy. And I realized Amanda and I have never had anything like that. Our gatherings are stiff, formal. People come because it's expected, not because they want to be there." He turned to look at me. "When did I become someone who values appearance over authenticity?" "When you fell in love with someone who valued those things," I said. "And there's nothing wrong with wanting to please the person you love. But you can't erase yourself in the process." Over the next few days, a strange and unexpected rhythm developed. Brad stayed in his old room. Amanda called constantly at first, then less frequently, then barely at all. She was staying with her parents, apparently, trying to salvage the narrative with them. Christmas Day was quiet. Just Walter, me, Brad, Caroline, Tyler, and their partners. We ate leftovers from the party, sat around in comfortable clothes, watched old movies. It wasn't grand or elaborate. It was simple and real. Brad helped Walter fix the deck railing that had been loose for months. I watched them work together, Brad handing tools to his father, both of them comfortable in the silence broken only by instructions and the occasional joke. "You know what I miss most?" Brad said over dinner that night. "We were eating at the kitchen table, paper plates because nobody felt like doing dishes. I miss feeling like myself. Like I can just exist without being evaluated or critiqued." "What does Amanda say when you try to just be yourself?" Sarah, Tyler's girlfriend, asked gently. Brad thought about it. "She doesn't say anything directly. She just gets this look, disappointed, like I've failed some test I didn't know I was taking. And then she'll make a comment about someone else, someone more successful or sophisticated, and I know she's comparing me to them." "That must be exhausting," Caroline said. "It is. I'm so tired. All the time. Tired of monitoring everything I say and do. Tired of second-guessing whether my clothes are right, my hobbies are acceptable, my job is prestigious enough." "You're a teacher," I said. "You shape young minds. You help kids fall in love with learning." "That's not just acceptable, Brad. It's noble." His eyes filled with tears. "Amanda thinks I should have gone into administration. More money, more status. but I love teaching. I love the moment when a kid finally understands the French Revolution or gets excited about the Harlem Renaissance. Then do that, Tyler said. Be that person. Don't be what Amanda wants. Be who you are. On December 27th, Brad pulled out old photo albums. We sat in the living room, all of us, looking through pictures from Brad's childhood. Birthday parties where I'd made elaborately decorated cakes, Little League games where Walter coached, family vacations in our old station wagon to national parks, all of us crammed in together, sweaty and happy. Look at this one, Brad said, pointing to a photo from his 8th birthday. He was covered in chocolate cake, grinning wildly, surrounded by a dozen kids from his class. Do you remember this party, Mom? You wanted a treasure hunt, I said. We hid clues all over the neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson next door let us hide one in her garden. Mr. Chen let us use his garage. The whole street got involved. It was the best birthday I ever had, Brad said. Every year after that, Amanda plans these sophisticated dinner parties. Last year, for my 35th, we went to some 5-star restaurant. I wore a suit. We ate food I couldn't pronounce. Her colleagues were there, talking about quarterly projections and market positioning. I kept thinking about that treasure hunt, about how much more fun it was to eat cake in the backyard with my friends. It's not too late, Walter said. You're 35, not 95. You can still have treasure hunts. You can still eat cake in the backyard. Brad laughed, but it was tinged with sadness. Can I? I feel like I've gone so far down this path, I don't know how to get back. One step at a time, I said. One honest choice at a time. That evening, Amanda called. Brad answered, and we gave him privacy, moving to the kitchen. But the house was small, and we could hear his side of the conversation. No, I'm not coming home yet, because I need time to think. Amanda, we can't keep doing this. I know you're upset, but your parents seeing those photos isn't the real problem. The real problem is that we've built a marriage on pretense instead of truth. I think we need counseling, both individual and couples. No, this isn't negotiable. I love you, but I don't like who I am when I'm with you. That's exactly what I mean. You're already defensive, already making this about you being attacked, instead of about us having real problems. The conversation went on for 45 minutes. When Brad finally emerged, he looked drained but somehow lighter. She agreed to counseling, he said. She's not happy about it, but she agreed. That's good, Caroline said. That's a start. On December 28th, something unexpected happened. The doorbell rang around 2 in the afternoon. I opened it to find Amanda standing there, flanked by her parents. Richard Monroe was exactly as I'd always seen him, tall, stern, in an expensive wool coat. Patricia Monroe was elegant, perfectly coiffed, her makeup flawless. But there was something different in their expressions, something almost humble. Mrs. Thompson, Richard said, we were hoping we could speak with you and your husband. And Brad, if he's here. I let them in, surprised and wary. Brad came down the stairs, freezing when he saw Amanda and her parents. We gathered in the living room again, this familiar space that had seen so much truth-telling in recent days. Richard cleared his throat. Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Thompson, I want to apologize. We saw the photographs from your Christmas celebration. We saw what a real family looks like, and it made us realize some uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Patricia spoke then, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. We raised Amanda to value all the wrong things. Success over connection. Image over substance. We taught her that love was transactional, that relationships were about strategic alliances rather than genuine affection. When we saw your family, Richard continued, saw the joy in those photos, the authentic love, we realized we'd failed our daughter. And in failing her, we'd helped her nearly destroy her marriage. Amanda was crying silently, tears streaming down her face. We've spent the last 2 days talking, Patricia said. Really talking, maybe for the first time in our marriage. And we've realized we don't want to be the kind of people who create more pain in the world. We don't want to be the reason our daughter doesn't know how to love freely. She turned to me, and her eyes were wet. I wish I'd been the kind of mother you are. I wish I'd created the kind of home where laughter was welcome, where imperfection was okay, where love was the priority. Instead, I created a museum, beautiful to look at, empty to live in. The honesty was staggering. I found myself standing, crossing to Patricia, taking her hands in mine. "It's never too late to change," I said. "Never too late to choose love over image." Amanda looked up at me. "I don't know how to do this. How to be real instead of perfect. How to love without conditions. My parents are right. I don't know how to have healthy relationships because I never saw one modeled." "Then learn," I said gently. "That's what therapy is for. That's what honesty is for. You and Brad can build something real, but only if you're both willing to do the work." "I want to try," Amanda said. "I'm scared. I'm so scared of failing, of not being good enough. But I'm more scared of losing Brad because I was too proud to admit I need help." Brad moved to sit beside his wife. "We'll do it together. But Amanda, no more lies. No more performing. If we're going to make this work, we have to be real with each other." She nodded, leaning into him. And for the first time since I'd known her, Amanda looked vulnerable and human and like someone I might actually grow to care about. New Year's Eve arrived with the promise of fresh starts and second chances. Walter and I had planned a small, intimate dinner, nothing like the grand Christmas party. Just family, trying to find a new normal. Brad and Amanda came together, but something had shifted. They sat close but not touching, polite but not performative. They were two people trying to figure out if they could build something real from the ruins of what they'd had. Caroline and Jason brought Emma, who was thrilled to spend the evening with her grandparents. Tyler and Sarah came bearing a chocolate cake Sarah had baked. And surprisingly, Richard and Patricia asked if they could join us. "We don't want to intrude," Patricia said when she called, "but we'd like to learn, to see what a real family dinner looks like." I'd been skeptical at first, but Walter had squeezed my hand and said, "Grace, Dusty, always grace." So they came. We ate pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, simple food, nothing fancy. But the conversation around the table was different, more honest, more real. Patricia asked me how I'd raised my children to be so close. I told her the truth. It hadn't always been easy. There had been fights, disagreements, years where Caroline barely spoke to me because she thought I was too controlling. Times when Tyler had pulled away because he needed to find himself. Moments when Brad had chosen friends over family and I'd had to let him. But we always came back to love, I said. We always prioritized relationship over being right. We apologized when we messed up. We forgave when we were hurt. And we kept showing up, even when it was hard. "I never apologized to Amanda," Patricia said quietly. "Not once in her entire childhood. I was the mother. I was always right. At least, that's what I believed." She turned to her daughter. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry I taught you that perfection mattered more than authenticity. I'm sorry I modeled a marriage that looked beautiful but felt empty." Amanda reached for her mother's hand, both of them crying now. Richard cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the emotion but trying. "Brad, I owe you an apology too. I've been dismissive of you, of your career, of your values. I thought success was measured in salary and status. But watching you with your family these past few days, I realize you're richer than I'll ever be. You have something money can't buy." The evening wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences, moments of tension, but there was also laughter. Emma told terrible knock-knock jokes that made everyone groan and giggle. Tyler shared a story about a disastrous camping trip from his college years. Walter did his impression of the grumpy neighbor from our old street, making even Richard laugh. Around 10 o'clock, Amanda asked if she could help me with the dessert. We stood side by side in the kitchen, cutting slices of Sarah's chocolate cake. "Dusty," she said quietly, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I was cruel. I was petty. I tried to take your son away from you because I was jealous of what you had." "I know," I said simply. "Can you ever forgive me?" I looked at this young woman who'd caused me so much pain, and I saw myself at her age, insecure, trying so hard to be perfect, terrified of not being enough. "I already have," I said. "Forgiveness doesn't mean I'm not hurt. It doesn't mean I trust you yet. But it means I'm willing to leave room for you to grow, to change, to become who you're meant to be, instead of who you thought you had to be." Amanda nodded, tears streaming down her face again. "Will you teach me? How to cook like this? How to make a home feel warm instead of like a showroom?" "Yes," I said. "If you genuinely want to learn, I'll teach you." We carried the cake back to the dining room. As midnight approached, we all gathered on the back porch, watching fireworks bloom in the distance. The neighborhood was alive with celebration, with hope for the year ahead. Brad stood between Amanda and me. He put one arm around his wife, one around his mother, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like he was choosing. It felt like he was integrating all the parts of his life instead of keeping them separate. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered, "for not giving up on me, for showing me what real love looks like, even when I'd forgotten." "You're my son," I whispered back. "That doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't expire when you make mistakes. It's just there, always." As the clock struck midnight, as fireworks painted the sky in gold and silver, Walter pulled me close. "You did good, Dusty," he said. "You stood up for yourself, and in doing so, you saved our family." I leaned into my husband, my partner of almost 4 decades, and felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. The past week had taught me something crucial. For so long, I'd believed that being a good mother, a good person, meant accommodating everyone else's needs, even at the cost of my own dignity. I'd thought love meant absorbing hurt without complaint, bending until I broke, making myself smaller so others could feel bigger. But that night when I'd said no to Amanda's condescending invitation, when I'd chosen to celebrate with people who valued me, I'd discovered something essential. Real love doesn't require you to diminish yourself. In fact, real love demands that you stand tall, that you honor your own worth, because only then can you model for others what respect looks like. Teaching Brad self-respect meant first showing him what it looked like in action. My Christmas party wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. I reclaimed my joy, my home, my right to celebrate with people who saw my value. And the reconciliation with Brad didn't happen because I begged or accommodated further. It happened because I stepped back and let him see, really see, what he was choosing to lose. Sometimes people only recognize love's value when they experience its absence. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is establish boundaries and mean them. I'd also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or immediately trusting again. It means staying open to growth, in others and in yourself. Amanda's journey is her own. She started therapy, begun the hard work of understanding why she values image over substance, why she's so afraid of genuine connection. I can offer grace without sacrificing my boundaries. I can be willing to teach her without pretending the hurt never happened. The healing isn't complete. Brad and Amanda have months, maybe years, of work ahead of them. Their marriage might survive, or it might not. That's their choice to make. But whatever happens, Brad knows now that his parents' love is constant, available, unconditional. He knows he has a home to return to, not as a failure or a disappointment, but as a beloved son who's always welcome. Caroline and Tyler watched all of this unfold and learned their own lessons about standing up for what matters, about not letting others dictate their worth. Emma, at 7 years old, is growing up seeing that love can be both strong and gentle, that you can be kind without being weak. And me? I learned that at 62, I'm still growing, still learning, still capable of change. I learned that my worth isn't determined by whether my son includes me in his Christmas plans. My value doesn't decrease because someone else fails to see it. I am enough, exactly as I am, in this modest house with my weathered hands and my silver hair and my lifetime of loving imperfectly but honestly. Spring came, as it always does. I found myself in the garden, planting tulip bulbs in the rich Ohio soil. The earth was soft from recent rain, smelling of renewal and possibility. Brad's car pulled into the driveway. He'd started stopping by weekly, usually bringing coffee and staying for an hour or two. Sometimes we talked about serious things. Sometimes we just sat together, working on projects, existing in comfortable silence. He joined me in the garden, setting a cardboard tray with 2 coffee cups on the porch railing before kneeling beside me. "Need help?" he asked. "Always," I said, handing him a trowel. We worked side by side, planting bulbs that would bloom in a few months, adding beauty to a world that needed it. Brad had moved back home with Amanda, but their relationship was different now, more honest. More work, but also more real. They went to counseling every week. Amanda was learning, slowly, how to be vulnerable instead of perfect. She'd come over twice to learn to cook. The first time, she'd burned the chicken and nearly cried, The second time, she'd made a decent pot roast and had been so proud that she'd taken a photo, not for social media, but just to remember. "Mom," Brad said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I've been thinking about what you said at New Year's, about love not having conditions." "Yes? I want that. With Amanda, with our future kids if we have them, with myself. I want to build the kind of life where love is the foundation, not achievement or image or what other people think." "That's good," I said. "That's really good. I'm scared I don't know how. That Amanda and I are too damaged, too broken by the way we were raised." I sat back on my heels, looking at my son. "Brad, nobody knows how at first. Your dad and I didn't have perfect role models either. We made it up as we went along, making mistakes, apologizing, trying again. The point isn't to be perfect. The point is to keep choosing love, over and over, even when it's hard." He nodded, blinking back tears. "I'm sorry I forgot that. I'm sorry I let Amanda convince me that your kind of love was old-fashioned or suffocating. You were trying to make your marriage work. There's no shame in that. You just got confused about what work meant. Now you know. Now you can do better." From the porch, Walter called out, "Dusty, your show is starting. Jeopardy!" We'd been watching it together for 30 years, competing to see who could answer more questions correctly. It was our thing, silly and small and perfect. "Want to stay for dinner?" I asked Brad, standing and brushing dirt from my knees. "I'd love that," he said. "Amanda's working late anyway. Some big presentation." "How's she doing?" "Really?" "Better. Still struggling. Still slipping into old patterns sometimes. But she's trying. She really is. Last week, she told her boss she couldn't work weekends anymore because family time mattered." I almost fell over. We walked toward the house together, my son and I felt the weight of the past few months finally lifting. The hurt would leave scars, the way all hurt does. But scars are just proof that you survived something difficult. They're evidence of healing, not of permanent damage. Inside, Walter had set out snacks for Jeopardy, the way he always did. Cheese and crackers, some grapes, leftover cookies. Brad settled onto the couch between us, and for a moment, I was transported back 25 years, when he was 10 and would squeeze between us for movie nights. Some things change. Some things don't. The love remains, constant and available, ready to catch you when you fall and celebrate with you when you soar. As Alex Trebek's voice filled the living room with trivia questions, as my husband reached for my hand and my son laughed at his own wrong answers, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Complete peace. Not because everything was perfect, not because all the problems were solved, but because I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. In this modest home, with these imperfect people, building a life of meaning and love and honest connection. That's what Christmas had taught me. That's what standing up for myself had revealed. You don't need a perfect family or a perfect life. You just need the courage to be real, to set boundaries, to honor your worth, and to keep your heart open to the possibility that people can change, can grow, can find their way back to what matters. And in the end, that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who didn't respect you? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself while still leaving room for reconciliation? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories about real people navigating the complicated, beautiful mess of family relationships. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message about self-worth and boundaries, please share this video with them. Thank you for spending this time with me, listening to my story. May you find the courage to honor your own worth, the wisdom to set healthy boundaries, and the grace to leave room for growth and forgiveness. Happy New Year, and may your year be filled with authentic love and genuine connection.